So, you want to save the world with clean energy? Make money doing it? Confused about the economic and technical realities of residential and commercial solar, batteries, heat pumps, EVs? Want the real-world scoop on new energy technologies, not manufacturer hype? Then tune in to the Weekly Energy Show, hosted by Barry Cinnamon. Insights from Barry's 40-plus years in the solar and energy industry will help you understand the future ways we'll generate and consume energy. And now, here's Barry.
Welcome to this week's Energy Show. Now, we're doing a two-part podcast with Vince Battaglia of Renova Energy. Part one, which we previously recorded and you can listen to, kind of talks about general issues that are important to customers, how Renova got started, things like that. This part two, focuses on big changes that are going on in the solar industry. And Vince has been riding the solar coaster with me and a few other really strong regional companies for many, many years. So really useful for us to listen in. So just getting started on this week's part two of the show. We're in the middle of the solar coaster. Companies are coming and going. There's anti-rooftop solar policies that are cropping up in many states, probably the most focused of which is in California, where we're literally getting killed by government, state policies that are being influenced by the utilities. They're spending tens of millions of dollars to kill the solar industry. They're not going to kill us because we've got superior economics and basically free power to customers, but it's really, really challenging. And that's why I want to just introduce again, one of the best run solar companies that I've ever seen is Renova Energy, and Vince Battaglia is the CEO of Renova Energy. They're based in Palm Desert, California, and over the past 18 years, they've become the leading solar installation company in the Coachella Valley. Not the festival, but the valley, and that's where Palm Springs and Palm Desert area are. And they've recently expanded to Arizona, very active in the Phoenix and Tucson. I guess they like deserts. But at the end of the day, Vince runs a terrific business. In my view, Renova's the prototypical regional solar company. And he's got a lot of good information for people in the solar industry and also for people who are just kind of looking at solar and wondering, how do they find a good company? So welcome back to the show, Vince.
Well, I thank you. After hearing that intro, well, first of all, most of those things about me are being too flattering, but I appreciate it. Coming from an OG like you, that's great respect, and respect back to you. But when you give an intro like that, I mean, imagine if you were to hear that industry intro for any other industry where we talk about a corruption and monopoly and the fact that, government isn't supporting a transition into technology. Imagine in any other industry, people would go, what the hell's going on here? You hear that and it should be like game over. Everyone should say, well, wait a minute, what's hampering a transition to less expensive, more advanced, safer, keeping communities safer, all of those attributes that our industry, the solar plus industry, delivers. And yet we're still struggling. It's interesting. What do politicians or those who are essentially lapdogs to utilities, what do they think is going to happen? Do they think pricing from the utilities is just suddenly going to, we were just kidding with giving you 12, 14% increases every quarter. We're going to back those off now. When do those folks believe that pricing is going to come down for the consumer? When?
It's amazing because they're spending ratepayer money to lie to customers, to lie to the legislator, to lie to the public, to lie to the policymakers, and they're extraordinarily successful at it. And it's something that's really, really, almost impossible to stop. But we are fighting it as an industry, and I'm confident that we're going to win. It's just taking time.
Yeah. So just the fact that you and I entered the industry, we knew it wasn't going to be an overnight solution. You and I are hard-headed people. For all of our fellow brethren and sisters out there who are also hard-headed, we got on this solar coaster knowing that, like a roller coasters actually start in one place and end in that place. We got on a roller coaster that doesn't have an end to it. It doesn't just wrap around in a circle, do a loop, and then end up where you started. This is it's a path.
And it keeps going up and it keeps getting better, but it's got some really gut-wrenching downslopes that we're holding on for dear life not to get thrown out. But we will succeed. Right? There's no doubt.
And we do know that only because we have a market out there. And that market, even in the disruption we're about to talk about with SunPower, even with that very public disruption and consternation and concern by industry, by government, and by consumers, even with that, we last month, through all of this, this dissolution period, last month, we had more inquiries, hot leads coming from our website than ever before. I have 217 leads that came from our website. And everything else, we've closed down all of our sources of lead gen in this last month. 217 alone came through the website. That means people are going to the website and hearing all this news and shutdowns and pauses and all that, yet are saying, I need to get what you can provide.
Yeah. And, we talk about that in our office, and we did a podcast recently about it, but what's affecting consumers is this huge double whammy. Whammy number one is electric rates have gone through the roof. I mean, it's probably 27% or so far this year, another 25% last year. So it's going way, way up. And then it's hot. I was reading the paper, not really a paper, but online, and Phoenix, Arizona, where you have an office, just logged their 100th consecutive day over 100 degrees. So, and there was an article in the New York Times a couple of days ago talking about, people are just seeing crazy, crazy electric bills. So that's what's happening. And that's why the leads are coming through. But it's so frustrating when you see a company like SunPower kind of collapse. But, when I last visited you, you told me about your SunPower partnership. Just tell me what happened to SunPower.
Sure.
And where we're going.
Very good. And if you don't mind, I am going to mention some names because I think in context, it will help people truly understand what happened over the past 3.5 years. Tom Werner left 2021. The dude was there 17 years. My Lord, we love him. Tom, if you're listening, big shout out to you. I was just telling Barry, we have to figure out how I'm going to talk to the Pope when I can. I'm a good Catholic boy, and I'll see if we can get you canonized, because Tom Werner led a charge and built an actual industry. That man alone. I mean, Lynn Jurek is amazing. She was incredible where she was at, but they had grown with just too much greed around them. Werner maintained control. He maintained control. I have great respect for him. He left after 17 years. We were all very disappointed. The dealer conference in 2022, we were introduced to Werner's replacement and a whole slew of executives that came from other industries, outside of Solar Plus. And it was a big concern. I stood up during the dealer conference and I gave more of a warning than a question in front of all of your and my brothers and sisters, and said, if you have to understand the difference between the unicorn that is SunPower and the dealer network that was created in order to go to market with product and with service and with financing and leases. You have to understand, to this new leadership I addressed, you have to understand the difference between that SunPower model and the Sunrun and Sunnova model. And when you get that, you're going to recognize what an amazing organization you've now stepped into to lead. And oh boy, Barry, did that just absolutely fall on deaf ears, because they decided then to spend an awful lot of money. They decided to obfuscate finances. They overbuild, they underbuild, they wreaked havoc under the leadership of this former Amazon executive, who, by the way, when he was 1 month in, so smartly said to the world, I know where I'm at. This is a great company. By the time I step down, I will make sure that buying a solar system from SunPower will be just as easy as buying a book off of Amazon. I mean, if you want to talk about idiocy, it just made me cringe. And so when I warned him and his folks sitting up there at the dealer conference, hey guys, understand the difference, and then you'll know, if you do damage the unicorn, you will hurt something that can never be replicated, that took years to build, took Werner's blood, sweat, and tears. And again, they processed very little of that and went ahead and spent hundreds of millions of dollars making terrible investments. And when I say that, I have to include myself, because I'm not a terrible investment, but what they did with the investment, and I'll get to that in a second, what they did with the investment was very short-sighted. They took a bunch of cash that they had sold Enphase stock. They had taken cash from the Maxion spinoff earlier on. They took all that cash and they decided they were going to develop regional strengths. And they bought Blue Raven at $163 million, picked up a few regional footholds within areas that SunPower wasn't very strong in. And okay, that made sense. It was a heck of a lot of money, but it made sense. They went to the board for that, and they, spent all cash. And they bought into 5 other dealers under the Dealer Accelerator Program, or DAP program. One of them was Renova. Then we have my great, brilliant, awesome friend David at Empower. We have the wonderful guys running Wolf River. We have the Seabright guys, and we have our friends at Freedom down in Texas and in Florida. So everyone got a less than 10% investment because it cost less than $10 million. And this new leadership didn't need to go to the board of SunPower in order to get approval. And the idea was, let's take regions around the country, and we will take the strongest dealers and we will grow in those regions. We will support those dealers as DAPs, and we won't have to go direct with SunPower, because SunPower direct was incredibly inept, and the management was just very difficult to manage. And their reviews were sliding down a hill. So it sounded like a good idea, Barry. But again, by 2023, we could all see, the DAPs could see, that we were not being supported. And the monies we were given for the shares in our companies were not for expansion. We actually had to use that money in order to support our businesses, because SunPower decided to exercise under this leadership, because they were having liquidity issues and they had a major cash crunch in October of 2023. So they exercised something, essentially it's a deferment, and they weren't making their payments to dealers. They were doing what's called offsetting, crediting your account. So that immediately was the worst idea for a dealer network, because it started to chip away. We went from about 500 dealers down to 250 in no time, because we couldn't count on getting Friday payments. So cash flow was reduced to nothing. And they decided that was a legal way for them to try to keep their business going, but it was completely antithetical to supporting a dealer network and getting your brand to market. So again, this was the naivete of that leadership. And there's a special place in hell for those people, because no matter what, I went to them. The Wolf River guys, all the DAPs, we were on the phone daily with them to help them understand what they were doing was undercutting the overall value of SunPower. Well, I got a hold of Tom Werner. Several other people got a hold of Tom, because we were using our DAP investment money all the way through 2023 to support the fact that SunPower had, again, liquidity. They had not filed their Q3 and Q3 and Q4. They didn't file them, brother, because there was so much shenanigans going on in the background that this new leadership was like, again, they underassumed and overassumed. And the SEC was like, all right, guys, this is not funny anymore. You're a publicly traded company. So
yeah, the accountants caught them, and
yes.
that clobbers the stock price, and everybody started
Yes.
getting worried. But wasn't that about the same time that they kind of lost their technological advantage in terms of having the best solar panels and being able to represent that? And then they started giving the dealers non-optimal solar panels. They weren't the best anymore.
Because what happened when you're in a cash crunch, they no longer own Maxeon, so they no longer had a differentiator at the kitchen table. The SunVault was having issues. The SunVault to this day has issues, and yet they're not manufacturing parts for us anymore. But that could be we could talk about that under old tech in a year from now. But they were having, liquidity issues. So what they were doing, because this was Amazon thinking, Barry, was, well, that Maxeon cell, yeah, it sounds real good. And yeah, it's good for the consumer, but it's too expensive. So instead of going back and trying to negotiate rates with Maxeon, they were buying anything that fell off the back of a truck. And those were the only materials that dealers were able to buy through them to attach to a lease. And that lease, again, would go into the SunPower portfolio. So they no longer had an exclusive product. They only had leasing and financing, Barry. That was it. And my arrangement and the other DAP's arrangement, we had golden handcuffs. We were required to buy materials, as well as, in an exclusive arrangement, materials as well as financing and leasing as a result of their investment in our companies. We never thought that they were going to, just pick up any piece of garbage, and that we would be required to put on rooftops. I circumvented that. I didn't expose any of my customers to buying the garbage that they were providing. I'll get into that at some other point, but I did, and I was required to use their leasing and their financing. So we fast forward Tom Werner steps back in, board removes this ridiculous Amazon the Amazon leadership, and Werner steps back in. And Tom looks around in February of this year and is like, "Oh my God, what the hell happened here?" And so God bless him, because he's been at it every day. I can get on a call with him at least once a week, or I can text him, "How you doing? You hanging in?" And ultimately, the fact that the annual for 23 wasn't filed, the SEC said, "Well, you're going to need an auditor." So they called in Ernst & Young in April. Ernst & Young took 2 weeks to say, "Oh my gosh, there's so much stickiness here." So Ernst & Young backed out. And when that happened, Total said, "All right, guys, we're no longer going to fund your lease tranches. And so you no longer have our broad shoulders behind you." Therefore, they ran out of a source of liquidity, the only source of liquidity. Even BlackRock backed away. And by, I would say, June of this year, not only were we getting offset and no money was coming from SunPower, but SunPower was laying off people in droves. And we could see that the lease, we were no longer getting notice to proceed for our customers. Those of you who are listening who understand what that is, that's painful. We build a system and then we don't get NTP. And so how do we get compensated for our labor and such? And then also on the service side, Renova is the main service provider for all SunPower systems in the Riverside area and the Tucson and Phoenix areas. And the problem is, if you're going to roll a truck, you have to be able to count on getting paid. And SunPower stopped paying all of that. So now you have lease customers going, "Wait a minute, why are you not servicing my system?" And we say, unfortunately, unless you pay for it, SunPower won't be paying for it. So as you can see, hopefully I've explained the spiral. And by July 17th, SunPower said, "We're no longer going to honor any lease system that doesn't have NTP." By the 19th, I had to furlough and pay all PTO and make whole my 360 Renovians. I put a pause on the company for a promised 3 weeks into the middle of August, so I could extricate myself from the financial relationship, the marketing relationship, the legal relationship with SunPower. Communicated through emails, we have 12,000, a little over 12,000 customers, sent everyone an email, accelerated our YouTube presence, our Instagram presence, went on our local news stations and spoke to everyone saying, "This is a SunPower dissolution, possible Chapter 11 problem. This is not a Renova problem. We'll be back." We pressed pause. We then came back 2 weeks ago. We brought back all divisions. So we are, happily, Renova is full service and full service again. And now we have 75 Renovians and we have our cadence back. We'll be bringing back another 100 Renovians in October. So everything is growth. Now we're in growth mode again. But SunPower then filed Chapter 11 2 weeks ago. And they had officially, I'm under a non-disclosure, so I can't say all the things that are happening in the background. But suffice to say, it looks like Complete Solaria, or Complete Solar as they're known now, will pay $45 million for literally $650 million in assets. That will close September 10th. Whatever is not sold of the assets will then go to an open auction, a live public auction on September 16th. Renova's 10%. We've already purchased that. We're in good shape getting that back. Any other DAP, I've spoken to those good folks. Most of them will at least get our interest back. But by September 16th, all assets of SunPower, except the brand name, Barry, will be accounted for under Chapter 11. Chapter 11 is simply a reorganization. It's not a Chapter 7. So SunPower is not dead.
Yep.
Now, what does that mean? I don't know. Werner knows. He won't share it with me, and he shouldn't. But it looks to me as if the SunPower brand name will continue on. Renova is now one of 12 dealers in the Q-Cell relationship. Q-Cell, or Axia Energy Finance, is the name of the lease and finance product. So Renova officially 2 weeks ago was brought on board, and we mostly offered Q-Cell during what you and I were talking about this decimation of SunPower offerings. Q-Cell was the best offering that they had available. So most of our leases were Q-Cell. Again, our cash were Meyer Burger. And so we're building until the end of the year We're finishing up. We've got 458 projects to complete by the end of the year, cash and lease. And at the end of October, beginning of November, we will begin selling and leasing systems through the QCell Enfin Axia program that we will install January of 2025 and going forward. But we need to clear out all of the backlog of folks before July 19th. But again, it's all about communication.
Yeah. And with regards to that communication, I was just so impressed when I saw that you sent out that email and communication that you put a hold on your operations for 2 weeks. I mean, everybody knew, the partners, customers, installers, your team, the shit had hit the fan. And you made the right decision. Yeah, I can say that because it's my podcast. So we can bleep it later. But anyway, so the shit hit the fan and basically said, I'm turning everything off for 2 weeks. We're going to figure out how to deal with this. I'm sure there was 20-hour-a-day communications with everybody trying to figure out what to do. Then you basically opened up the doors again, maybe with a little bit of a more modest operations at the time.
Yes.
And now you're on your feet, you're moving ahead. And that was just so impressive to me. Instead of just kind of willy-nilly bleeding more, you just basically paused, fixed it, and restarted. And that was
we have too great a purpose, brother. We're not in this just to spin a top and then just let that top, slow down to the point where it stops. That's not what we're about. That's not what this industry is about. There's a purpose here. And so bringing back 25 people, keeping the doors open, we responded to over 3,000. One thing that we did, that this is some advice for folks, don't have a reception during a pause. If you have to have a pause, which, by the way, I'm looking at my friends at Sunrun and Sonova, and like I say, the clouds are gathering. I hope to God that they're watching, because Sunrun's got a $2 billion in debt, and I don't know how they're going to make that up. I hope they do. I hope they slow down. I hope they pause operations. Sonova is the same way, not as much debt, but they need to at some point stop thinking like we are the solar plus industry of 2024. We are not, Barry. We are the solar plus industry of 2025. And in order to get to that thinking, we at some point need to stop and erase the whiteboard. And one of the basic principles was having people call into reception. And what I found the smarter way to do that is to have a call center. Let people call into the call center. Let the call center take the call, take the information without too much conversation, get the facts, transcribe into an email, and send that email to your team. And we did that for 3 weeks straight. Over 3,000 of those emails, we now had a short, curt question, and we could call that customer back immediately and answer that question. We didn't have to get 20 minutes of, well, I'm really not sure, and I love people and I love human beings, but we had to get to the point. And a way to do that was to get that call center engaged.
And we do the same thing. I mean, on a more modest basis, not in an emergency standpoint, but we do the same thing. Is we standardize how you're going to be responding to customer issues. Whether it's a bad inverter, there's leaking, there may be a battery issue, whatever. But when you get hit with a meteor that clobbers your business, it's a whole new set of discussions. So now it makes sense. You got 3,000 phone calls. You put them into bins. Maybe there was 10 different bins, and you said, this is what we send to these 300 people. This is what we send to these 500 people, whatever. And then you're getting back to them. You're telling them there's going to be a little bit of pause. You fixed it. You're moving ahead. You're doing it efficiently, and you're on your feet. It was just terrific.
And the low-hanging fruit, anyone had a severe issue from July 19th through mid-August, we brought back just enough technicians and installers to get out there and to help those customers. And we ended up not charging a lot of those customers just to help stop their bleeding, their issue. And then we began scheduling. August 25th, we began our scheduling folks for installations, for service, for cleanings, all of that going forward. But you do have to breathe, and you're going to get bombed by angry people. I got to tell you, though, the love that I got from integrators around the country was inspiring. Some mornings I go for my run and come in and go, oh, geez, I got 2,000 emails to answer here. And I was getting phone calls from guys I hadn't heard from years saying, hey, we're with you. If this could happen to you, this could happen to us, and we get it. I've heard from every reputable integrator that's out there. Those who maybe didn't call, it's okay. I understand that they felt that, okay, this is an opportunity now for us to step into Renova's shoes, and God bless you. And I hope you learned some lessons. But in this industry, we do not eat our own.
Yeah, no,
We,
yeah, we want the industry to succeed. And
yes,
my competitors, I want them to succeed. And
yes,
they know that, and I know that they'll be doing better if we're all hanging together. And that's what
yeah, exactly.
but we're talking about successes. And when I look at the continued successes of solar installers, battery installers, large and small, what strikes me is that there's a commonality. They have conservative business practices to get them through the ups and the downs. Because if you're just looking at the up and then you hit a bump and you're not prepared, you're going to be screwed. And more of when I see the ones that are successful, it's more of what they didn't do rather than what they did. For example, they're not doing door knocking. There's not third party, lead
Right.
generation, buy the cheapest solar. There's minimal subcontract. They don't have high pressure executive salespeople. The sales pitch isn't too good to be true. They're not trying to double every year. They're just more conservative. So, what are some of the solar installer, battery installer business practices that are leading to the long term happiness that your customers are displaying?
Well, how about just treating people the way you want to be treated? I mean, approach people the way you would want to be approached, and always make sure that everyone down the chain, from your executives down through to the energy consultants, down through the guys who are up there cleaning, that they are mindful that the customer always comes first. We are construction enthusiasts. That's what we're all construction we're in the construction industry, Barry, but we happen to be customer service heavy. That's how you're successful. If you see yourself in the construction industry, but your emphasis is on customer service, you're in the solar plus industry. You have the right to grow in the solar plus industry. Why? Because there is no book out there that is how to build a solar company for dummies. It doesn't exist. We are writing it every day, and we have so much in the way of headwind from our competitors, which are utilities. Those are the only competitors we have, folks. It's the electric utility monopoly. The headwinds coming from them are so strong that it's easy to find their weak points, and we just get stronger at it. Their weakest point is customer service. So focus on being a construction company in this emerging evolutionary industry, but focus on your customer service. It's all about customer service. It's all about understanding if you were a customer, how you would want to be treated, what message you would want to receive. We're not adding technology to make people's lives more difficult. We're adding technology to make their lives easier. So if you're going to install it, damn it, you'd better be there to explain it. If you think you're going to install it like my friends at Sunrun and then walk away, you are going to have a very short term in the industry. And I believe Sunrun, it was under Lynn Jurek. She was the one who promoted customer service. She was the messenger for that. And I believe we've gotten away from that. But I also believe, Barry, that in this rising that we're about to see in 2025, after we're done with this political pause that's out there, this political, it's like an election recession. And when we get out of the election recession and the industry grows back again, those who are with us, Barry, need to understand that they must provide better customer service going forward. That is the Achilles heel of our competitors at the electric utility.
Yeah. And from a customer service standpoint, for a solar company, it's really, really hard to do. And you could make more money short term if you aren't candid with customers, if you kind of sell them a piece of junk, or you're not completing the installation, or you got some financing, you roped them into financing that doesn't make sense. Even some forgeries are going on. Those companies can make a lot of money in a short time frame. Then they're going to be gone. They're never going to be able to come back. The industry has a short memory. Those are the companies that, there's a big black mark on the executives there. So, but the companies that are around, like yours, like mine, like, Ed Murray's Aztec Solar, a bunch of others all over the country. I'm more familiar with the California ones. They'll survive. And we're supporting the solar industry. We're passionate about it, and we will make it survive. And that's why, I'm smiling. I'm so excited about this discussion we're having. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel. 2024 was really bad for everybody. 2025, I think, is going to be a little bit of a slow start. But our best marketing partners, and I talk about this all the time, best marketing partners is PG&E, because they keep raising rates and people don't trust them. And they're looking for alternatives. And that just makes so much sense.
So, Barry, also one thing real quick, talking about erasing that whiteboard, talking about a revival of those who experienced all of the downs that we have and the highs, but those lows are the lows that test your company's intestinal fortitude, right? But I want to make everyone who's maybe not aware right now very aware of the fact that artificial intelligence, I know it's a horrible thing to banter around, but it is not a horrible thing for our industry. When you are slowed down and it causes you to pause and to reorganize, damn it, it's time to integrate AI. And you remember, there are only a finite number of questions that customers can have in the realm of customer service. AI can actually be taught to respond to those questions. So when folks call in, they can actually speak to an artificially intelligent gatekeeper who can then respond to the 20 or so questions that they may have very intelligently. So I want folks to remember, all is not lost if you feel you don't have the bandwidth for excellent customer service. Why? Because AI is stepping in. And so become an expert or bring an expert in on AI. And I promise you, in the rebuild, we are going to beat the hell, or as my friend Barry says, shit. We're going to beat the shit out of the utilities in 2025 and onward.
Well, yeah, I kind of being more specific about the excrement metaphors. We had talked about the excrement hitting the fan, and that's going to get thrown back in the face of the entities, the utilities who are really trying to hurt customers. But let's kind of take a step back. We're going to wrap up a little bit.
Okay.
What advice do you have for people to find a solar company and a storage company that's going to meet their long-term needs? I mean, obviously the answer in the Coachella Valley and Phoenix and Tucson is, well, talk to Renova. And I hope people think about Cinnamon Energy Systems in Silicon Valley. But else, how do they find good, reliable companies?
Not all companies should take, I want to put a caveat out there. Not all companies are capable of taking on, business. There's certain business that a company should leave on the table and allow someone who is closer to the community where someone, say, calls in. In other words, local. Local, I can't express enough how being local, hiring local folks, finding a solar company that is actually cares about your community, that does pick up the phone. It's kind of tough, to say. My immediate answer could have been only work with a company that calls you back. But a lot of companies will call you back, and then it goes downhill from there. Aside from looking at Yelp and Google reviews to see if the positive responses reflect, the kind of service you're looking for as a homeowner or a business owner, besides doing that, that's a no-brainer. You should do that. But to find folk who are local, who talk locally about your community, who inspired enough to support the softball teams, who support the local football teams, who the ones that you see with a local presence, and not like, there are a couple of silly companies that will fool people by saying that they have a Palm Desert location, and they'll say, we're on the 3rd floor of this certain building on Main Street, and homeowners will drive by and see it's only a 2-story building. So you need, as a homeowner and a business owner, to do your due diligence. Number one, they should express to you and to the market that they are local. They should pick up your phone call, and they should have those good Google and Yelp reviews. I've been doing this 18 years. To me, it boils down to that. There's really nothing more than that. You're even homeowners, if you're talking to your neighbor and your neighbor expresses that they liked a certain person, that's wonderful. I mean, there's nothing stronger than getting a recommendation from someone you personally know. So go with your gut. Do you like that neighbor? Do they operate like you do? Do they have the same requirements as you do? And maybe the local solar company doesn't have too many reviews yet. So if that's a fact, maybe you can call them and ask them, hey, is there anyone that you would suggest I would call to find out, how their experience with you was? And most generally, people are honest, my friend. Barry, you and I have faith in humanity. So generally, people are honest, and you won't get BS'd by a local company that's just trying to grow. So I hope that helped.
Or a fake local company. So, okay.
Or a fake local company.
Yeah. So I don't want to repeat myself. And, we talked in the previous episode about what you do for fun, but I had a question because I was looking at your bio, and it looks like you spent some time in Russia. Any plans to go back?
I have not been back since 1999. I would like to go back. I left a lot of really good friends there. I was there for 7 years, and I just went over to kind of see. I went over to see what the world was like. Yeltsin was in control at that time. I started a whole bunch of awesome businesses and spent most of my 20s there, and then came back in my early 30s, and I miss it.
Yeah. I would like to go there. Obviously not now. Some people in my family, my sister spent some time there. It's one of the countries that I've never been to, but It's off the list right now until things stabilize. But
yeah, Putin, when he came, that was why I left.
yeah,
you could just see I had my Russian passport. I was considered a local. I was, I had my business and I owned apartments and we had a great thing going. And then Putin, yeah, he's a miserable, miserable.
If you would have stayed, you'd probably be in a gulag right now.
Absolutely. Oh, for sure. Oh my God.
All right.
That was the first time I had experienced the solar system, was at a cafe where the owner of the cafe used a solar mod to power a battery so that he could get his lights to work 24/7 because the power was very intermittent in Moscow. So that was my very first microgrid, was what I saw on a cafe, and that inspired me when I came back to really look around. And then when posed in my MBA, posed with the requirement to find a business and start a business, that really was a big part of my inspiration. So Russia, they're great people there. They have incredible spirit. Я очень люблю русские люди. And I miss Russia.
All right. Well, now that you're here and you're going to stay here, how can people get in touch with Renova Energy?
Great. Call in directly at 760-568-3413 or get to renovaenergy.com or renovasolar.com online. All of our information is there. We're all over Instagram. We're all over YouTube. They can email me at vbattaglia@renovaenergy.com. Battaglia is B as in boy, ATTAGLIA@renovaenergy.com.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have on this episode. Part 2 of the podcast with Vince Battaglia at Renova Energy. You can go back, and if you haven't heard part 1, definitely listen to part 1, a little bit more focused on customer-focused issues. But this was just terrific. And boy, we could do part 3 too, but we're going to call it.
Yeah, no, we
But Vince,
when do I get to see you in person? Are you going to RE Plus? Are you going to be around?
Of course, definitely. I'll be at RE Plus. We're leaving on Monday morning. It'll be my 20th consecutive year, probably you too. And we'll
be there. So I will ping you. I will get you by text, and we got to run into each other and grab a coffee. Okay.
All right. Plus let's see a lot of our old friends. So Vince, thanks for joining me on the show, and thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in. And if you missed any of today's show, you can always go to the Energy Show website at energyshow.biz and listen to the podcasts.